I haven't yet come up with a parody song for this episode yet.
Huh. There's something about Jimi Hendrix, Fire. Dun, 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 dun. You're there in that police car. Dun, 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 dun. I only want to let you die in the fire. Dun, dun, dun. Let me pull you from the fire. Let me pull you from the fire. Jaws of life, let me pull you from the fire. Oh! Oh, come on, officer. And let Don Marino come on over. Like that.
Okay, good. Right, I don't need to come up with one now. I'll just play that.
Live from the Talking Joe Studios. It's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, it's me, Mark, and welcome to Talking Joe, the G.I. Joe Comics podcast. You can find out all about us over at the website talkingjoe.co.uk, which points to all sorts of places we can be found on the interwebs. Today, we will be looking at G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, issue 310, released 18th of September 2024. And joining me, as always, to talk about it, pulling him from burning car, it's A Real American Tim. Tim, how are you?
Hello, Mark, and hello, listeners.
This came out the same week as Destro issue 4. It's sort of fun to see a double dose of G.I. Joe. We will cover issue 4 and 5 of Destro when issue 5 of Destro is released. So any other business from last episode, we egregiously, Tim, forgot to make a note of the fact that in the last episode 309, a televiper let loose a fascinating little piece of insight. The televiper on one panel said, "Reports are coming in from our assault forces in Springfield, Ohio, Great Khan." So we know the location of this Springfield as being Springfield, Ohio, which is quite topical. So when certain people complaining about dogs and cats being eaten, maybe it is being done by Cobra mutated troopers with their taste for forbidden flesh. Tim, what did you think of this reveal of the location of Springfield?
Okay, so Hama wrote that weeks and months ago before a talking point then got picked up in other layers of news in the United States. If this is, I mean, there are no mistakes, right? Because there's no prizes and there's retroactive continuity that, rewrites what we thought are mistakes. I think I see that in this very issue, 310. But if this is now canon, and I guess it is, it's earth-shaking G.I. Joe news, because all the way back to, I think, issue 10, Springfield was anywhere in America. We didn't know which state it was in. And we could definitely guess it wasn't, California, Maine, or Florida. It sort of felt like it was in the middle.
I did ask Hive Mind on the Facebook forum if there has ever been any Springfield that has been previously sort of indicated. And apparently, I'll start with the less exciting one. There was a G.I. Joe convention in 2015 in Springfield, Illinois. And in the IDW Dixon continuity, that was also where their Springfield was, in Illinois. But the one that I had forgotten about was that Springfield, Vermont was a secret Cobra base that was referred to all the way back in issues 14 and 16, and potentially retrospectively forgotten about.
Okay, so are we taking this in issue 310 as a slip that we sort of don't believe? Do we take this as Hama revealing where Springfield actually is? Because why not? The joke has been sustained for many years. Or is this sort of all things to all people, like this is one Springfield, but maybe there have been other Springfields. Maybe the battle for Springfield back in Marvel issue 50 is this same Springfield, but sometimes when Cobra Commander has talked about Springfield, he means, Springfield B and Springfield C, which are not in the state of Ohio. And I feel like the continuity for a Real American Hero, both as a story and a brand, which has stretched out over several generations. Some of the main characters served in the Vietnam War, but they don't call it that anymore. And they're still sort of eternally, 35 years old or 45 years old. And, in 2024, you can't have served in Vietnam and also be active in the military now, seeing combat. And similarly, Larry Hama will write things and then contradict them. I think sometimes on purpose. I think sometimes out of a very passive, innocent forgetfulness. And then we'll write something to explain them and sort of, I think, chuckle to himself later because he's not taking it too seriously, even though I know we take it very seriously. So based on how casual this is in issue 309, where Springfield is revealed seemingly as Ohio, I don't feel like this is the final statement on it yet. I feel like it's in this nebulous space between sort of typo, for a 4-letter, maybe it has a comma after it. I don't have my copy of 309 in front of me. Maybe it's a 4-letter typo. Maybe Hama is sort of throwing in something there to have a character talk about in a later issue, like retreat back to other Springfield, just sort of expand and confuse and delight us all further. That's how I feel. I feel like this is very plastic right now. It's very flexible.
Yeah, hearing it the way that it's been written about up to this point, it seems a bit strange that the kind of location is being given away in such a throwaway way. And there was a lot of ways in that sentence. So yeah, it feels a little bit incongruous in terms of how it's been presented to us, almost like it's been a mistake. But how would a mistake like that creep in seems strange. So it would be nice if Larry Hama was still answering the letters, because this would be a great thing to ask him directly about in the letter column. Maybe we'll never know exactly.
Yes, but good spot, good catch, finding that big reveal or change in 309. And apologies to our listeners who come to Talking Joe for two definitive opinions on G.I. Joe comics, with lots of facts and context sprinkled in. We sure missed that one when we recorded that episode.
Okie dokie. So this issue is brought to us by the regular creative team of writer Larry Hama, pencils Paul Pelletier, inks Tony Kordos, colorist Francesco Segala, with Sabrina del Grosso the flatter, letterer Pat Brousseau, editor Alex Antone, publication design Jillian Crab, and creative consultant Diana Davis.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
Okay, cover A, once again, drawn by Andy Kubert. This is a good example of tension, of dynamic tension. There have been G.I. Joe artists in various runs, Skybound, Devil's Due, Marvel, IDW, where I might criticize the artwork as sort of soft or lacking tension. And what I'm talking about is an actual physical sense that, as one set of muscles are flexing, another set of muscles are relaxing, and that someone is sort of, tugging, reaching, grabbing, lunging, and that might be in a very superhero-y pose like we see on the cover to 310. Cobra Commander is lunging towards Zartan, a little bit of Cobra Commander, battle armor Cobra Commander, who we have not seen on a cover since I think 1987, right? He first shows up on the cover to 58. He's on 2 or 3 more covers. We have not seen this costume on a G.I. Joe cover since Marvel issue 74 in the Cobra Civil War. So, and not only is he lunging, his left fist is ready to punch, and his right hand is holding his sidearm weapon that came with the toy, and he's blasting past Zartan, who is, his left arm is up, planted against Cobra Commander's shoulder to hold him back, while his mouth is open in a scream, and with his right hand, he's holding what looks like an Uzi, and he's blasting past Cobra Commander. And there is twist in both of their spines, and Zartan's legs are in front of him in a kneel, but he's getting sort of toppled over by Cobra Commander, and behind them is the Baroness, and she's got a pistol, and she's looking at Cobra Commander, and there's some tension in her pose. There's almost no background here. There's just a little bit of sort of rocky stuff on the bottom, like 10% of the cover, and then everything else in the original artwork is just left white. And in this cover, color artist Nathan Fairbairn colors a sort of lime to aqua gradient. And okay, so we don't exactly know where this is. There aren't, some trees or buildings. I mean, we do, but from the image, right? What I mean is,
I'm being facetious, Tim.
In a previous and in a future Andy Kubert cover, we see the Springfield sign, or we see definite signs of Springfield. And here, this could be any battlefield. And that is not a criticism. What it does is it gives color artist Nathan Fairbairn an opportunity to just sort of go crazy or go subtle with one color or a gradient. And this cover really sticks out because we rarely see green and aqua as a dominant background color on a G.I. Joe cover. And I took a quick look, and the Marvel 10, Marvel 20, Marvel 52, Marvel 126, those have some green in the backgrounds, but not quite like this. Special Missions 4 with Lifeline hanging upside down, and we're looking down past him at all the grass and the leaves. But that sort of operates differently than this, because this is sort of sky, or sort of a general anything behind this trio of characters. And the sort of closest I can find is the cover to Marvel 200 is the cover to IDW Real American Hero 218, which is Snake Eyes and Scarlet, and there's this sort of hazy aqua green behind them. But if you look at any 10 or 50 comic book covers, and it's dependent on the decade, right? If it's Marvel in the 60s and 70s, there's going to be a lot of yellow. But G.I. Joe covers tend to have a lot of black in the backgrounds, red, blue. It's a nighttime sky, it's a fire, it's a battlefield, and you rarely get green or aqua. So this cover feels really different because of that color and because of this reappearance of Battle Armor Cobra Commander, and it is a delight. One last thing about Kubert's technique, I'll just jump over to cover B, which your comic book store can order as many or as few as it wants. It is an open to order cover. This is black and white with no colors of the same Andy Kubert image, and Kubert does a really nice job of putting black shadows on the sort of the left rear side of Zartan and the top and right side of Cobra Commander. And Kubert has all these really strong directional lines. If you look at the inking on Cobra Commander's arm over the blue stripe of the G.I. Joe logo, if you look at the lines on Cobra Commander's thigh by his gun pouch at the right edge of the cover, it's just happening everywhere. And Kubert's stuff is always dynamic and always well drawn and always well composed. And again, what a thrill it is to have him doing a run of covers on G.I. Joe. Cover C, which is a 1 in 10 variant. This is this the last of them? Has artist Brad Walker announced any more?
Yes, this 310 is the last of the 10 covers from Brad Walker. In the back of the book, we see the new artist who will be tackling the cover Cs, which is Francis Portela. They described it as a theme, so I'm assuming that he'll be doing several in this theme.
Okay, so Brad Walker with colors by series interior color artist Francesco Segala. This is once again a Joe character or two in the foreground, taking up the bottom half or so of the cover, and then in the background, a villain is looming. In this case, it is Snake Eyes, Snake Eyes version 2. We have seen Snake Eyes previously in this C cover Brad Walker series, the very first issue of this Skybound run, 301. But that was Snake Eyes in his commando outfit. Again, this is version 2. He's got the sword. He's got the Uzi. He's running at you and sort of leaning forward. So he's quite foreshortened, both his thigh, his arm, and his torso. And right behind him is Timber running with a fierce look on his face. And then, as with the previous covers, there's sort of this separation between foreground hero and background villain. It's a light orange, medium orange, explosion-y, fiery shape. And then taking up the top, slightly less than half cover is the face of the robotic Alpha 001. So you're seeing this sort of circular, metallic, shiny robot face. You really are just focusing on the eyes. There's a little bit of additional details on the top, wires and plugs and, circle lights. But you're very aware of these two recessed eyes behind a smooth, shiny sort of skull helmet shape. The eyes are glowing green, and the villain cast is green. So there's a real contrast between the villain top part of the cover and the hero bottom part. This is notable because all of the previous covers have been Cobra-specific characters: Major Blood, Firefly, and now we have this sort of third-party character. Mark, do you want to talk about any retailer-exclusive covers?
Right, so in the credits page, we can see that there are 4 retailer exclusives: Rob Siski, Jimbo Salgado, Tiago da Silva, and John Gyang. John Gyang being quite hot in the world of G.I. Joe, famous for his not only variant covers now, but also his work on the Classified line, having done the box art for the Once a Man Cobra Commander and the forthcoming Nemesis Immortal. Of these 4 covers, at time of recording, I have only seen one, which is the Rob Siski, which is of Baroness, sort of up from, I guess it's a 3/4 shot of Baroness, looking quite highly rendered and sort of CGI, with a somewhat gynecological glowing red background behind her. Definitely not a fan of this one, which kind of has a lot of those, hallmarks of that make you think, is this digital composite or an AI or something? But it's not a personal fan of this one. It is an exclusive for Eastside Comics, so eastsidecomics.com is the place to go to find this one. And as we find out the details of the other 3, they will get posted onto the Talking Joe Facebook page.
I will say that although the other 3 retailer exclusive covers aren't easily Googleable or obvious to find at our time of recording, I am seeing some Jimbo Salgado G.I. Joe cover. I am seeing some Jimbo Salgado G.I. Joe pinup artwork on the website WorthPoint, and I at this casual glance, I think I like his pen and ink work. I don't know what his sort of full covers might look like. I don't know what the color treatment is, but his stuff looks heavy on the detail, with sort of a realistic bent, slightly in the direction of Tim Bradstreet. But to be continued.
Right. So what actually happened in the issue itself? Let's find out in a plot breakdown.
Plot breakdown.
In Springfield, Cobra Commander has a plan to lure Serpentor's invading forces into a kill zone in the high school athletic fields. He spots Baroness Zartan and the Dreadnoks and sends in the CG, who is in the battle armor, after them. In the confrontation, the CG in the battle armor takes out the Baroness with a double tap to the center of her mass. Zartan rushes Baroness to the Springfield emergency room. Elsewhere, Dawn Moreno resolves the dilemma where the cop that killed her parents is stuck in a burning car. She uses Jaws of Life to rescue him. However, when Dawn's back is turned, the cop draws his gun before he is then taken out himself by a blast from the invading Cobra mutants. Serpentor Khan decides to command from the front and flies to Springfield. He passes over the G.I. Joe recon team in their Zodiac raft, fleeing Cobra Island. As they discuss the Serpentor clone that they have in their freezer, they are spotted from above, and a Night Raven shoots at them in a strafing run that miraculously leaves the boat sunk, but the Joes unharmed. And in Scotland, Destro hears the bad news about the Baroness, leading him to call up the Iron Grenadiers and roll out the heavy air transports and make for Springfield. To be continued.
Overall, what's your top-down reaction to this issue, Mark?
It feels like we're definitely in the middle of the story on this one, that we've got less new sort of plot points being introduced and sort of nudging forward the story in motion and sort of clarifying on a few things that have happened up to this point as well. So it feels a little bit less revelatory than maybe some of the issues that we've had so far. Like for example, this Dawn Moreno cop car story, it sort of seemed to be quite telegraphed that something like this was going to come. Then it came, and then it kind of resolved in a sort of similar kind of way to pretty much what we would have expected. And what occurred to me, sort of just thinking about this issue that we're on 310. Is that it's the continuation of a story that pretty much started 10 issues before the end of the IDW series. With we had High Stakes and All In, and then we've had 10 issues at Skybound, and it's essentially been one full continuing story for the most part. I guess we had a pause where the Joes fled from Cobra Island, and they had the funeral, which kind of had a little bit of a break moment. But it feels like almost a sort of single running story, and I guess that's relatively unusual for Joe, that you would have a story that feels like it's kind of continuing without too much of a break point like that you think back to any favorite G.I. Joe run, and there's quite often quite a hard reset of a brand new story starting up. You think back to the Benzene stories in the early 100s. That was kind of complete break point from what had happened in the issues before, and then you sort of open up in a new conflict. This one's sort of been running for a while, and as much as I'm enjoying it, I am sort of getting a bit of a taste for some fresh meat, something a bit different to inject into this piece.
That's a good point. I will somewhat agree. I do think that because there was a year gap and a change in publisher, penciler, inker, color artist, letterer, and editor, that to some degree there is a break in there. I mean, I know that issue 300 had a definite cliffhanger, and then you just had to read the next issue from a different publisher. But it does feel to me like I agree with you on sort of overall, on an overall view, it is one big story, since they since we learned of the casino at Cobra Island. We're not dealing with the casino on Cobra Island anymore. Serpentor Khan is now a quite established character. He's now been around for a year, if we're just talking sort of issues, 12 issues or so. And I think there's a sense that the story is actually kind of two stories. There's Snake Eyes coming back and Serpentor Khan appearing. That's up to about 300. And then there's the, what do we do with that? Serpentor Khan launches an attack, and then a slightly different configuration of Joes are doing Joe things, going here, recon over there, fighting back here, with an eye to Springfield. So I do agree with you. I think narratively it is one story, but I think there's enough of a change, particularly because of that publisher shift, that, I think if you were to ask Hama, he would say, well, it's always been one story. All 300 issues are one story. But you'd say, well, yeah, okay, but in terms of sort of arcs or mini arcs or spotlights on character, or as you described, like a hard stop, like I always talk about the first page of issue 97. They are not dealing with the Snake Eyes trilogy. They're not flying back to Joe headquarters and patting each other on the backs. It's just a new thing has started. And as you say, the Battle of Benzene. My sense here is that to take your point of I'm ready for something different. So I'm thinking about what is different here, and that Cobra Commander seems to be pulling off his trap, and that he seems to be very successfully using a decoy in his battle armor, and that we are experiencing the battle armor as kind of a second Cobra Commander for this issue and the last issue, as the real Cobra Commander is back in headquarters. Those are new.
And it's cool to have this battle armor Cobra Commander because, as you've said, we've not seen him in the comics for a long time, and it's, cool design and all the rest of it. And also to the extent that there's been so few kind of like named Cobras that they're out on Cobra Commander's side, outside of Cobra Commander and Mindbender, to have another kind of lead character, even if it is an unnamed CG.
Yeah, to have a specific character, even though he's basically like CG 70652, but he's a very specific one for this issue because he's got a direct line to Cobra Commander and he gets to pretend. I'm trying to figure out for myself how new or familiar or overly familiar some villain teaming up with another villain, some villain going up against another villain. I think if you were actually Cobra Commander and you were actually Destro, and you actually had, minus the thing where you'd age naturally over 40 years, I think if you had 40 years of stories, you would come together and move apart. I think there would be some business deals that fall through. There'd be some betrayal. There'd be some I want to kill you, cover of issue 116. And I want to kill you, 308, 309, 3010. And maybe between those, Destro sort of forgives him or sort of accepts Cobra Commander's business as a necessary evil. I don't know that I figured out yet how satisfied, dazzled, bored is too strong, but how familiar or how new or how novel this feels that, in this issue, Baroness and the Dreadnoks are trying to remind me. Whose side are they on? They're trying to help Cobra Commander, but Cobra Commander's trying to kill the Baroness, right?
Well, I don't know. It's a bit confused, isn't it?
Zartan is not trying to help Serpentor Khan. Wait, is he?
I think they do say something similar to that effect. That they're like, hold on, we're killing the wrong Cobras here.
Okay.
I think they've gone in to kind of have a snoop about and have kind of got a bit drawn in. And their exact motivations is a little bit unclear. They've gone over there because Zartan was shot at by a missile, and they decided that it wasn't Destro who did it, so it must be Cobra in some form. So
okay.
they've gone to see what's going on and maybe take a bit of revenge or something along.
But they're showing up in the middle of another Cobra civil war.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
and And as to the thing about how novel or exciting is it that Destro's arming up to go and take on Springfield, let's not forget that the last time we kind of saw Destro and Zartan in a big way before this was during Snake Hunt, when they geared up to go and help the Joes sort of rescue Snake Eyes, and sort of fully geared up and went into Springfield and took on Cobras. So it's treading recently explored ground to some degree of the Dreadnoks and Destro invading Springfield.
Right. And then similarly, about halfway through the book, Zartan says to Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes and the other ninjas, we need to get Baroness to a hospital. Will you accept a truce? And Storm Shadow says yes. Mm-hmm. And up until you said that a moment ago, I had forgotten where we stand with Zartan versus the Joe ninjas. Is all forgiven? Are they sort of quietly taking a break from their feud? Is there an active feud? And I believe you are reminding us that Zartan did help the Joes in Snake Hunt, which for new listeners is a 10-part story that Larry Hama ran from IDW's issue 266 to 275, and the idea was to include every living character would make an appearance, and all the Joes go to Springfield, and your mileage may vary as to how that story turns out. And we didn't see Zartan again after that.
No, not at the back end of the IDW era. And a little while before that as well, there was another sequence where the Joes were in the basement of the Springfield Community Center, which is the Cobra base, and they escaped from that situation with the help of the Dreadnoks and the Thunder Machine. So even before that most recent storyline in Snake Hunt, there was another one there where they sort of put their previous disagreements to one side and essentially were working together.
So I think my reaction to your comment that this story has been going for a while, I think I would like to see a new location or geography become prominent. And it doesn't have to be a new Cobra base. It could be an invented fictional country. It could be, 3 issues where Cobra or a rogue Cobra agent is doing something in France or, like Kenya or Australia. I do feel like Springfield has been used a lot recently, and I think Hama might consider it sort of logical to keep going back there the way that we keep going back to the pit or Fort Wadsworth, because that is Cobra headquarters. But I'm always tickled when there's sort of a new wrinkle like Broca Beach or, sort of the next disguised Cobra location. And, in the back of my mind as I'm reading all these G.I. Joe stories where I think Hama is, in a very general sense, aware of continuity, but not remembering a lot of specifics. And he has said he doesn't read his old work. Like when an issue comes out, if 310 comes out this week and Hama's working on an issue that's going to come out in 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months, if he gets a PDF from the Skybound editors, or if he gets a box in the mail with his free copies of 310, I don't think he sits down and immediately reads it and says, how did this all turn out in its final form? Like he lived it while he was writing it, and he internalized it when the art came and he did the dialogue. And I don't know if when, the artwork gets colored, if and that updated PDF gets sent around to the team, I don't know if Hama reads it a second time, a third time, to sort of absorb the updates. Like, oh, well, now the scene really is taking place at, sunset because I called out for it. So as he's writing this Springfield story, I don't know that Hama is thinking really carefully about, like, okay, well, we're in Springfield back between 266 and 275, and we're in Springfield X number of issues before that. And in the back of my mind, as I'm reading all of these G.I. Joe stories, which have a lot of continuity sort of around them. I'm aware of the Energon universe where there's almost no continuity.
Mm-hmm.
Everything we're reading is new, like a character shows up in issue 1 or 2 of Scarlet, and it is a character, it's a G.I. Joe character from, 1985, but we haven't seen them in the Real American Hero book in a long time, and it's their first appearance in the Energon universe. And so it feels really novel, even though that's a character who's, 37 years old. It's Snow Job. I'm not spoiling anything exciting. It's just an Arctic guy who gets to do something, cool for 2 pages in issue, I forget, 2 or 1 of Scarlet. And so as I'm reading G.I. Joe 310, my feeling is I'm sort of interested in something drastic happening. And when Dawn is presented with the opportunity to let this mean character, the police officer, die, when the Baroness gets shot in the chest, when a Heat Viper's rocket blows 2 dreadnoughts off of their motorcycles, I think, oh, is someone about to die? Is Hama gonna, metaphorically, pull the trigger? And or when a Night Raven strafes 4 Joes in a raft off of Cobra Island, and I think, oh, is this going to be a big change? And then I realize, no, I think these characters are going to make it through, because Hama's on record saying he doesn't like to kill characters. And, sort of the proof of that is that besides the high body count of the Battle of Benzene and those, 2 famous issues where a couple Joes die, he hasn't really done it since. And the opposite, there are lots of examples in G.I. Joe where a character is injured or shot or blown up, and we think they're dead, and then it turns out they're okay, and then a few issues later, they're back in the story. Baroness in issue 16, Storm Shadow in issue 40-something.
40-something.
You were correcting me in a previous episode. And I agree with that general sentiment. I actually don't want Hama to kill off characters, because, a year from now, there might be something awesome to do with the Baroness, or this might feel impossible, but later on, a different writer may be telling stories with these characters, with this continuity. I know it seems unlikely or impossible, but, if Hama has killed off a couple main characters, I always wonder sort of, I don't know that Quick Kick was ever going to come back, but he can't, because he died in that story. And even if he'd shown up for, half an issue, the way that Lightfoot and Airtight just showed up for half an issue, he can't. And so if it's not going to be a character dying, then it's going to be hopefully a new dynamic for who's on whose side, or where we go, or what a character wants. And right now, if Serpentor Khan is like the smartest human zombie ever, because he's got all this brilliant, he's got sort of all of the Cobra knowledge that Mindbender programmed into him, plus he's Genghis Khan. And he sends some almost undefeatable zombies to Springfield, and Cobra Commander traps them. And then he says, I have to do this myself. Then I feel like sort of there maybe isn't a sense of stakes, that Serpentor Khan is relatively easily defeated. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of property damage in Springfield, but, I don't see characters that I know and love dying. I don't see a lot of Springfield being destroyed. I'm not getting a sense that this, quote, civilians, the Cobra civilians in Springfield, are all that put out by this battle happening. And so, I hope in another issue or 2, there's going to be a sort of a bigger showdown between Serpentor Khan and Zartan and the Ninjas, or between Serpentor Khan and Destro, or between Serpentor Khan and Cobra Commander, or all of them.
Okay, indeed. I just flicked back to last issue 309, and there is a sequence in there where Zartan, they're getting in this unintentional battle with some of the sort of mutant cyborgs, and he says, "We are technically on the side of the cyborgs. Stop dismembering them." I might have missed something here in terms of the kind of the logic step there, but I'm not 100% sure why he has kind of landed on that as his opinion, that he is on the side of the cyborgs.
Didn't they realize that that Cobra Commander fired that missile at him?
Well, I thought that they had just decided that it wasn't Destro.
Okay.
And it basically was Serpentor and Revanche, wasn't it, that did do the attack?
Trying to stir up trouble or trying to just take out? This is one of those
trying to take him out, I think.
This is one of those fun aspects of reading a comic that has a lot of continuity. You know, might you reread or skim the last issue, the previous couple of issues before you read the new issue? And, you know, it's funny. I can say, you know, is Hama remembering all this continuity? Well, I have a responsibility as co-host of this show. Should I have spent the whole morning before we sat down to record reading not just the new issue, but also several before? And, you know, my counter is I think I can still talk about the comic without a full refresher. And also, if you have to reread all the issues before, maybe the issue itself isn't doing its job. And there are some, you know, very Larry Hama reminders of what has happened. You know, on the first page of 310, this conversation between the Fang 3 pilot and a Televiper and Cobra Commander, who's sort of updating you what the actual military strategy is here. The plan is working. Here's an error detected. The Serpentor's cyborg army, I think that's supposed to be Serpentor Khan's cyborg army, or the Khan's cyborg army. Serpentor Khan's cyborg army is following our retreat right into the kill zone. Like, okay, good. Either that's what was set up in the previous issue, and this is a Larry Hama reminder, because he's writing it from month to month. He's not writing it for a graphic novel where, you know, 1 page ago is the last page of the previous issue. Or a few minutes, an hour have passed since the previous issue, and the placement of soldiers and vehicles have changed, and this is where we are right now, that Cobra Commander is springing his trap. And then, what was the other sort of reminder of what? Yeah, if you hadn't read the previous issue, and there was less dialogue in the second scene where Dawn, I guess it's the third scene, second scene where Dawn is standing at this giant inferno that's about to take over this cop car and some buildings behind it, and the cop sort of narrates what's happening. You're Don Marino. You came back to kill me for what I did to your parents, right? Mm-hmm. Go ahead, kill me. And then it escalates. He says, "Oh my God, you're just going to stand there and watch me burn." And you see her clenched fist, and then she walks away. And part of that is some more old-fashioned Larry Hama writing. You know, I don't think, you know, a handful of writers who've been writing Marvel and DC who started in the last 10 years would have sort of had the police officer narrate this scene this way. And I thought, oh, it's a little cumbersome. I do remember this from the last issue. But at the same time, it's crystal clear what's happening. And then she gets out this very interesting object, which looks like a G.I. Joe accessory, actually. Remind me, so Dreadnought Ripper. Mm-hmm. What does his original toy come with? He comes with a machine gun with a blade on it. He
comes with like a Jaws of Life, which then has like a hose that connects to a motor that he has as his backpack. Although I think Ripper wouldn't necessarily use them as Jaws of Life, but, you know, Jaws of Death, or just an implement to destroy things with.
Yeah, I mean, the toy packaging actually calls it Power Jaws. Uh-huh. But the thing that Dawn is holding on the fourth panel of this page, you know, it looks kind of like a Heat Viper's rocket launcher. Mm-hmm. It looks like
toyetic.
Yes, it looks tight. And I don't know what regular Jaws of Life look like in 2024 that are in the back of ambulances. And then, you know, the police officer spells it out. You got the Jaws of Life. So I wanted to talk about this scene with the 4 Joes in the Zodiac boat.
Oh, should we talk about the Dawn scene while we're on it first?
Oh, I think we sort of guessed this. I think we sort of called it last month.
Yeah, I mean,
she's not going to kill him, and she's not going to let him die.
Yeah, and it happened, and they kind of had. I'm calling this having your cake and eating it moment. That in terms of the resolutions of that story, that she, she saves him, and she has that kind of, moral superiority stance that she's a good guy doing a good guy thing and not walking away and letting someone die. But then he's a bad guy. So once her back is turned, he's drawing his weapon on her, and he says, "That Moreno kid's moral superiority is stuck in my craw. I'll fix her smug behind." And then he gets blown up.
Blown up by, it's not clear, because the next panel we see a range viper, a cobra soldier. I can't tell. Did the range vipers come with like a rocket launcher thing? I'm gonna say the range viper did it. Yeah, so I think Hama understands that he doesn't want to harm the character of Dawn, that she needs to stay good, even though it's difficult. But Hama also knows that we, the readers, want to see this villain punished. And he's a Cobra cop, right? He's not just a cop who killed 2 innocent people. He's a Cobra cop who killed 2 innocent people. And so I did think as this happened, I thought he sort of puts a button on it, He sort of wraps it up for us with a bow and a slice of cake, because we had our cake and we ate it too.
Hey, and the moral superiority was stuck in his craw. Do you know what a craw is?
Isn't that someone's, like the back of someone's mouth where they swallow?
Yeah, it's a throat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in my mind I'd kind of conflated a craw as being the same as like a claw, like it being maybe a stone stuck in like an animal's paw or something. But no, it's about something being stuck in your throat.
Okay, so back in the Gulf of Mexico, just off the coast of Cobra Island, artist Paul Pelletier does something really nice. He shows the 4 Joes and Dr. Mindbender and this frozen coffin on the boat, and right behind them is Cobra Island. So he's very clearly showing that they haven't made it that far, and that they are paddling away from Cobra Island. And then Zombie Mindbender, who I feel like is still sort of simultaneously overused and underused. And we talked before about how sort of the only person who Cobra Commander has to talk to for the last 100 issues is Dr. Mindbender. And, where is Scrap Iron? And, where is Major Blood? And where is Gristle? And, but also maybe he's not a zombie, he's a mutant. But doesn't he want to eat flesh? And
Yeah.
Here he is right next to 4 Tasty Joes. And I guess he's handcuffed. And, maybe if he tried, they would just kick him overboard. But I do feel like this idea that the mutant or zombie Cobra characters have this urge that they can't control. We actually haven't seen it out of control. A few of them have talked about it a few times. And, it makes them stronger. And I don't know what they've tied his hands with, but I'm fine with him not getting free. But anyway, so Paul Pelletier does something interesting at the bottom of this page, where we are now further from the island, and the camera has pulled back. So the island is smaller on the left, and the Zodiac boat is very small on the right. But we're looking up, and we can see 9 Cobra planes in the air. And so when Helix says, "Check it out, another whole air armada is taking off for Springfield." Maybe that's not Helix. One of the Joes. Oh, that's Malta. Excuse me. Right, because he's in the front left side of the boat. But it's one of these very simple things that good, clear comic book storytelling pulls off, which is you establish where all your characters are in relation to us, the camera, and any important location or background elements. And as additional elements are introduced, you place the, quote, camera so that it is still clear. You establish and reestablish. Where are the Joes? They're like 150 feet away from the island. Oh, now they're a bunch of planes. Where are the planes? of course, they're above the Joes. And where are the Joes? Well, now they're 400 feet away from the island. And this might seem like a simple thing. And this panel at the bottom of the page is not the most exciting panel. And I don't think it's the one that Paul Pelletier spent the most time on. I think he spent more time drawing a really nice face on Helix and Dr. Mindbender in the previous panel. But to very clearly show all three of these important elements, island, plains, water, and where they are in relation to each other. And a lesser artist, I think, might leave out one of those because of sort of where the camera is placed in its distance from the Joes and its angle. Is it aiming down? Is it aiming straight? Is it aiming up? And I'm, a lot of comic book artists, if they are paying less attention to really clear storytelling, they tend to draw, fewer backgrounds or less linear perspective or sort of more sort of pin-up-y shots of characters who are sort of more like facing towards the camera. And, as soon as you draw a character like Batman or Wolverine, much smaller and like from above, so that you can see like the whole danger room and the door. It's like, oh, Kitty's going to come through that door and say, Wolverine, the danger room's malfunctioning, right? You have to establish where the door is. How close is Wolverine to the door? How much distance does Kitty have to clear before she goes through the doorway to get to Wolverine, right? But that page of artwork with a very small Wolverine on it is not going to sell for as much money as like a big half panel splash of Wolverine like slashing at some robot, and there's a word balloon pointing off that's like, Wolverine, the danger room's malfunctioning. And it's like, oh, I guess that's Kitty. And you turn the page and then Kitty's talking. But anyway, this is a long way of saying that I still very much enjoy Paul Pelletier's drawing and storytelling on this issue. And I'm a little sad to see him go.
His last issue, because Mooneyham is back next issue.
After a month off.
Oh, after a month delay, yeah.
After a skip month. Oh, Skybound. I know that juggling freelancers and licensing approvals with Hasbro. I know that, if anyone in your assembly line, catches a cold or has a death in the family, it's like, it's not 2 days, it's like a week. And if you miss a week, you might throw the whole month schedule off for an issue. And I think I would rather a skip month than a bad issue. But that said, I really am used to 12 issues a year for a monthly G.I. Joe comic. So Skybound, this is my encouragement. This is my big ask. Please bank some issues and no more skip months, okay?
Well, the good news is that at the Audible Interlude panel with Larry Hama at Dragon Con, Larry did say that he was working on issue 314, which does indicate that he is some way ahead, which should also help the artist to get a little ahead as well. So I'm optimistic that that's a good sign for both the book sort of staying on schedule beyond this point, and also Chris Mooneyham being able to cope with that monthly schedule for the next few issues.
So if we're talking about 314, that would be February of 2025.
Wow, the distant future. So while we're on this sequence, I felt like this was almost like a no prize happening in real time on the page.
The Joes in the boat.
Yeah, exactly. That we're like, well, why has Serpentor got an arrow in his eye? Isn't real Serpentor killed with snake eyes at the bottom of the pit? What's going on here? And they're, here they are crafting this explanation as to, what this Serpentor is, why he's got an arrow in his eye, even though that makes no sense. So it's kind of it's like a chef's kiss for kind of explaining away something that has happened with a kind of semi-plausible explanation, but without them admitting to have making a mistake earlier on. So what do they say? So they kind of explain why. They kind of explain why they've got this Serpentor in the boat to begin with, because it's like, why are you actually stealing this body? So it's a good plan, getting Dr. Mindbender to resurrect the original Serpentor, and turn him against Serpentor Khan. So we're getting the original Serpentor and using his military brilliance to take on the...
I just need to interrupt because the last time the Joes had a Serpentor...
Did it go well, Tim?
Didn't he kill Snake Eyes? So I would just like to generally caution the Joes from resurrecting Serpentor. Ever. Because they're 0 for 1.
If you don't take lessons from history, you'll be...
I bet you know who knows that? Genghis Khan. Okay, so please continue with this no prize in real time.
And then Dr. Mindbender says that your plan will never work. First off, the body in the freeze unit is a spare clone and not the original body. The arrow wound is a latex prosthetic I applied to confuse anyone who stumbled across my stash. Snake Eyes destroyed the original, and there's no guarantee that the clone of the original can defeat Serpentor Khan. So it's all explained away. It was the original Serpentor that was resurrected by the Joes before and was killed by Snake Eyes, and is potentially a dead body somewhere in the bottom of some shaft at the bottom of the pit, or possibly that body might have been recovered.
Back in issue 213?
Yes. And this body here is a separate clone of the original Serpentor.
Okay, so as I read this, so your description of no prize in real time, as I read this, I chuckled to myself and thought, I wonder if after the last issue came out, someone said to Hama, oh, wait a minute, this can't be that body from the previous Serpentor resurrection because its eye got fixed. So why would this have an eye wound and an arrow sticking out of it? And so someone either says, oh, Paul Pelletier, you were drawing from the wrong reference. Or someone says, oh, Hama, you were alluding to the wrong sort of Serpentor corpse. Can you come up with an explanation to fix this, right? Yeah. Or maybe it's in the first person. Maybe Hama's looking over, like how many Serpentors have there been? Oh, wait, that's not this one. That's that one. Okay, I'll fix this. And if as a reader who's been paying attention to all of these sort of Serpentors and eye wounds, if you find this bit of dialogue frustrating or careless, I sort of imagine Hama not even chuckling to himself, but just sort of putting his finger and thumb to his chin and staring off into space. Okay, that's not that Serpentor. Oh, well, it's just a fake. The prosthetic wound is just to confuse anybody who stumbles across Mindbender's shaft. And Hama has said this in interviews, I think with us and also many other people. He's not concerned with plot. And I think that throws off readers, sometimes me, who love Larry Hama's plots, where there's a switcheroo, there's a surprise, someone who you thought was on one side is really on the other, or, how issue 92 gets resolved with the October Guard in Sierra Gordo. That's not how you thought that. It doesn't always end with a fight. It ends with a handshake or a kiss or someone saying, you know what, we're not going to have this fight after all. Go home. Or even something like, silent interlude, right? Or issue 300, this amazing choreography. I think people look at issue 21 and they think of Hama as plotting, writing. I know he drew it. He didn't write it with a typewriter, with a computer. But I think people look at 21 and they think of Hama as plotting a story, as a sequence of events. Or we look back to 300, right? And oh no, the C-130 is going to crash and Duke and Wild Bill and the Joes in the back are going to die. How is Hama going to plot his way out of this? And Hama has said over and over and over, he just listens to what the characters want. And so I think where I might get frustrated that I'm seeing some plots recur, Hama comes up with this crafty Mindbender thing that Mindbender would do. oh, of course Mindbender has a, quote, stash of genetic material. Or, oh, well, Mindbender is a conniving bad guy. And so if he does have, more than one Serpentor clone or corpse, finger and thumb to chin, oh, well, one of them is a fake. So that if you steal it, you think you've got the original. Mm-hmm. And I don't think Hama is looking at that and saying, this is a lot of times that Serpentor has shown up and died and come back. I think this is Hama saying, okay, how do the Joes react when there's a new Serpentor? Or, okay, how do I make a new Serpentor different? Oh, it's Genghis Khan. Okay, what does Genghis Khan do for Cobra Commander, right? And so if you're thinking about plot, you're thinking, oh, Genghis Khan might invade Springfield or try and wherever, overthrow Cobra Commander or take out Destro. That's plot. But character is, how does Cobra Commander react? Oh, well, he protects his own. He goes to Springfield and he fortifies Springfield. And, oh, he really shines because even though he fails a lot, and he was just a used car salesman once, Cobra Commander is a military tactician. And so he's going to pull out his best plan. And let me flip back to page 1. He's going to trap Serpentor's cyborg army as they retreat right into my, Springfield, Cobra Commander, kill zone. And so, who is Dawn Marino? She's a Cobra youth who becomes a Joe. And over and over, she's done the right thing. She's forgiven Firefly back in issue 250. She's joined the Joes because she wants to make a difference. She's tried to check in with her parents. And so, in terms of plot, it's like, well, maybe the scene with the cop could have been shorter or longer, or the stakes could have been higher. But Hama's writing as character. Like, what would Dawn do? She would save him because she's a good guy. What would this guy do? He would try and kill her because he's a bad guy. And so Hama's writing character, and I think oftentimes me and a lot of readers are reacting to plot first and character second. And so it's like, our third Serpentor. It's like, but Hama's not tracking it like that, I don't think. And you can argue that he should be, but that's not how he's writing it.
So, in terms of some people might not like this no prizing, and I think those same people might not like the plot armor that the Joes seem to have just in the next sequence where they Serpentor unleashes.
Wait, what was that term?
Plot armor.
Plot armor.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
So yeah, Serpentor unleashes a strafing run, let her rip with that Gatling gun or very powerful weapon on the Night Raven, and sploot, shoots up the raft, which sinks.
And we see a panel of 3 silhouettes, and it's definitely not Mindbender because Mindbender's arms are bound. We see 3 Joe silhouettes seemingly get shot up because there's a lot of water splashing in front of them and behind them where the Night Raven's bullets are hitting the water. All right, please continue.
And so, yeah, it all looks, very bad for those Joes concerned. But then there's a blurp and a sploosh as the Serpentor freezer surfaces, along with all of the Joes plus Mindbender, with being helped to the surface by Muskrat, and they say, "Oof, was that a miracle or not?" "Not quite. He had us centered in his sights, but his gun parts were wider apart than the freezer unit. The rounds impacted on either side of us. Good thing the aim points weren't set to converge at a fixed range." So, a very kind of technical military equipment explanation as to how the Joes are able to kind of get away apparently scot-free without being completely unscathed by this hail of bullets beyond losing their boats.
So when the Joes got shut up a couple pages earlier, I thought, oh man, Hama's done it. He's taken out 4 Joes. Oh, maybe Mindbender gets away. Maybe that's how this scene really gut punches readers. And then I thought, okay, well, no, this is all in 2 seconds. And then I thought, well, he's not going to kill 4 Joes. Maybe 2 of them are injured, 1 is fine, and maybe 1's dead. I'm not sure about Mindbender. And again, this is all in the span of 2 seconds. And I thought, there's something about this drawing that Paul Pelletier did where the Joes are reacting. Stuff is happening near them. Their boat is rocking. I don't actually see them getting perforated.
Yep.
And then in the next panel, as the planes fly away, there's smoke in front of and around the wreckage of the boat. And I don't see, like one sort of a shriveled arm, coming up from the boat or anything. And I thought, okay, I think when we check in with these characters in an issue, they're all going to be fine, and there'll be some fun Hama explanation. And it's 2 pages later, 2 page turns later. And as I read this, I thought, as I said earlier, okay, Hama's not going to kill 4 Joes and Mindbender. And I actually don't even think he's going to kill 1 Joe. I think he's going to have, when have Joes been injured? Hawk is shot back in the Andrew Wildman run. What is that, around 129? It even makes the cover. And what's the cover? Is it like 195, the IDW run, where a couple of Joes were inside the helicopter and someone has been, it's like Flint and Lady J and Roadblock and someone's sort of on the ground getting patched up. And that scene happens in that issue. And I'm forgetting 1 or 2.
In the sweep of things, there have been a few people in the IDW's era I can think of, like Sightline lost a leg and Sherlock lost an arm. And obviously Wade Collins died not too long ago.
So Hama has Joes, and main Joes occasionally get injured. So I did not think that these 4 Joes and Mindbender were going to get killed. And as the 2 panels, after the 2 page turns and, blurp sploosh and the cryogenic freezer coffin unit surfaces and the Joes are sort of hanging onto the side. And I thought, man, if I were 10, I would have been so worried during those 3 or 4 pages between the beginning and the resolution of this scene. And I'm older. I've read a lot of G.I. Joe comics. I've read a lot of comics. I've seen a lot of movies and TV where you are briefly or not briefly led to believe that your favorite character is not going to make it out of a scene. And then there's sort of a trick, like, oh, no, there was more armor than I revealed. Or, the bomb was a dud. Or, it's a flesh wound. Or whatever it is. Oh, the gun pods were wider apart. And I thought, is Hama going too far here with sort of credulity and sort of pulling me along for this dramatic ride? Are the stakes, though they're high, are they sort of false, right? Like, do you see that page where they get shot up and you immediately think, no, they're not dead. Hama's sort of cheating. He's sort of pulling one over on us. And the explanation isn't going to be reasonable enough, logical enough, believable enough. And I get to this explanation and I think, this sort of feels like Hama does this thing occasionally where some Joes are climbing a hill or a Cobra base, and then there are some Cobra gun pods up on the base and they're aiming their gun pods down. And a Joe says, they can't traverse the angle down to actually match our ascent. They're sort of shooting over our heads. Or up on the top, a Cobra says, aim down at the Joes. And another Cobra says, I can't traverse the angle of my... and I actually think this does happen sometimes. And Hama knows a lot more about military stuff than me. So I sort of chuckled at this explanation and I thought, I will let this pass and I'm enjoying it. And I don't want him to kill off Helix, Muskrat, Molto, and Wetsuit. And then you get this contrast, because on the next page, now we're worrying about the Baroness, who has a sucking chest wound.
Stop! Have a time!
Time to beat the soles of your boots with my face. Sucking chest wounds, red ninjas, brain scanners, rubber oozes, blue ninjas. And then some more sucking chest wounds. Hammer time.
This is my hammer time. The reappearance of the sucking chest wound, which we've not seen for a few issues, but has been used 10-ish times in the last 150-ish issues. So it's just a nice reoccurring hammerism of someone suffering from a sucking chest wound.
So I think the Baroness is going to live. I think her injury is I mean, we see it on the last page, is the big motivator for Destro to get here. And going back to your comment at the beginning of our episode about sort of how many issues this story has taken up and the pacing, it would be really cool if the next issue Destro is here. And I think what's going to happen is in the next issue, Destro is going to be loading up some planes in Scotland. And then the next issue, Destro is going to be flying. And then the next issue, Destro shows up. And that's okay as long as what is happening in Springfield, is progressing in an exciting way. I would like some sort of jumps ahead in time, jumping ahead an hour, jumping ahead a day. If the Four Joes and Dr. Mindbender, Molto says, start kicking, it's a long way to shore. Like, we need to sort of paddle with our feet. And I don't know if he means Florida, or I assume he means straight ahead to Florida where they were going, not turn back around. We were only 600 feet away from Cobra Island. We can regroup there. Although maybe it's so obvious they don't have to say it. Like, no, we're turning around. We're going 600 feet back to Cobra Island. We'll try and find a radio. We'll try and find a motorcycle. We'll drive up.
And if a lot of the Cobra forces have left Cobra Island, then possibly it's somewhat in a more undefended state, such that they can rustle up a vehicle to exfiltrate in.
But if the next issue, the Four Joes and Mindbender are still paddling, and we get some good dialogue, that'll be fun. I think I'd be more satisfied if in the next issue, these Four Joes and Mindbender have gotten picked up by a fisherman's boat or the Coast Guard or a cruise ship, or they're just back in Florida and, they're standing on a pier or a dock or a beach and they're bickering with Mindbender and calling Joe headquarters. Okay, so would you agree the Baroness is going to live?
Yeah, I don't see a world in which she doesn't, to be honest.
Okay.
Who are they going to put on all the variant covers?
In previous issues, Mark, you have spent a little time on Snake Eyes in the new Skybound issues speaking.
Oh, yes.
Snake Eyes talking, Snake Eyes talk. Talking about things he wants to say.
All right, so Snake Eyes talks twice in this issue?
Yes, so what does he have to say? He says the cop car is completely engulfed in flames. What else does he say?
A page turn later, he says, wait, isn't that the Dreadnought Thunder Machine?
There we go. Just as well Snake Eyes can talk, because we would never have been able to find out these great insights otherwise.
Okay, what we've been saying in previous episodes is that Snake Eyes seems to be saying as little as possible, and for a few issues, it seemed like Scarlet was minimizing his speech, either because they were having a romantic moment or they were having a bonding moment and he didn't need to say anything. But in a previous issue or two, particularly around Don Marino, he was saying, you're one of us, your family, you're a Joe. And I think he has said one sort of brief badass thing like, we'll get him, something like that. As I previously admitted, I have not reread the last few issues just before reading issue 310 for this episode. So his two pieces of dialogue here, they don't feel particularly poetic or dangerous or sympathetic. They seem expositional.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Hama does write some character dialogue in an expositional way. I think another way of saying this is old school. Another way of saying it is old fashioned. And I think Hama would defend himself as saying it's clear. He wants the reader to always know what's going on, and I think sometimes it's a little too expositional, but I'm also used to it. So I do think I sort of want Snake Eyes' dialogue to be held for the more sympathetic, more badass moments, and maybe it could have been Storm Shadow or Jinx who says, the cop car is completely engulfed in flame. Wait, isn't that the Dreadnought Thunder Machine? But if he's sort of back and sort of on the same level as anyone else, then maybe he does just say the expositional thing.
I think it's possibly a consequence of the sort of Marvel writing style here, where it's sort of a brief plot and then the dialogue pass comes later. That if Pelletier has happened to draw a panel where there's really only two characters in the forefront of the panel, Scarlet and Snake Eyes, if one of those, two of those people are talking, one of them is Scarlet, the other one almost needs to be Snake Eyes, because in both of these cases the other characters are kind of pushed too far into the background that you would really expect them to be talking. So
if you're reading left to right, if Scarlet says something and someone responds, it should be someone to the right of her, which Snake Eyes is in both of these panels.
Yeah, and the other characters are quite far back in the background as well.
It's mechanical, and yes, we have the Dreadnoks, the previously named Dreadnought Thunder Machine, eviscerating several of the mutants, the Cobra Soldier mutants. We see a Cobra Soldier, I think a Hiss driver, a Range Viper, another Cobra Soldier, and then I can't tell, but they all get brap, tzing, bwee, torn apart, and it's all mechanical. It just looks like debris and cords and tubes. It doesn't look like
playing
blood.
up the cyborg aspect.
Yeah, it's not blood. It's not mutant guts. But hey, don't forget, a page earlier, a human being police officer is blown up by what I assume is a rocket. I've got another very small error detected on the third to last page of the issue when we cut back to the Cobra Command Center. Cobra Commander is talking to his Televiper, and I do really like all of Cobra Commander's dialogue in this issue, where he's talking to his Televiper and the person in disguise as Battle Armor Cobra Commander. But he says, he's looking at the screen, and the Televiper says, the blue dots are our troops, and the red dots are the cyborgs. And I do very much enjoy Francesco Segala's color work on this series and in this issue. I'll just note that I see blue dots and white dots.
Yep.
I don't see red dots. So either that's a coloring error or that's an editing error, sort of telling the letterer to change the word red to the word white. But then, importantly, in the next issue, right, Cobra Commander has his fists up and he's excited and he says, they're walking right into the kill zone at the high school athletic fields. Such a perfect plan. So I think, oh, cool. Cobra Commander is really good at this. He's taking out these mutants, and I hope we see it in the next issue. And then he continues with one of these very Larry Hama sort of nuts and bolts. I've talked about how many bullets are in the chamber or in the clip, or how much gas is in the tank. Can you actually go from point A to point B in the amount of time? Hama's figuring out this stuff. And Cobra Commander says, it all saves the Springfield infrastructure as well. So they're going to have this sort of massacre of the bad guys in the high school athletic fields, not, out on the roads and bridges and fire hydrants and, some of the houses and the community center and near like public works and all the expensive recycling trucks. And I had been thinking previously as reading this issue, well, what about the rest of Springfield? How is this battle actually, how big is the town and how much of it is sort of people are hiding and how much of it is the battle active and how much of it is sort of Serpentorcon's troops have driven through it and sort of are now ignoring it. And this gets a line of dialogue that nods to that fact. And that is both sort of Hama being practical, which I love, and also Cobra Commander being sort of practical and, what would the word be? Sort of prideful, or not selfish,
Civic pride. Let's keep streets of Springfield mutant free.
He says he doesn't say he's worried about people.
Mm-hmm.
So again, like, I just described this as Hama nuts and bolts, which sounds like plot. But I think this line is actually Hama writing character, which is Cobra Commander doesn't care about the citizens of Springfield unless they're defending him.
Mm-hmm.
But Springfield is expensive to maintain and fix. And if some of it gets blown up because of, tanks driving and chopping up the street and explosions, it's going to be expensive and time consuming to fix. And so that sentence there does both. It both checks off the nuts and bolts practicality of this battle and also reminds us who Cobra Commander is.
Very good.
I spy with my little eye.
I had a few I spies. So the first one was just pointing out Zanzibar, who appears in this issue and is name-checked.
I do think we saw him briefly in a previous issue.
Yeah. So we saw him in that group shot where the Dreadnoks appear for the first time, and possibly on a couple of other panels. But he's name checked. You okay, Zanzibar? As he's sort of hanging out the side of the Thunder Machine, and he talks as well. Ears are ringing, but I'm good to go. The Thunder Machine's going to need a paint job though. So a sort of little moment for Zanzibar to be included as part of the Dreadnoks. A bigger I Spy is on page 1, the Cobra Fang 3, which I wanted to highlight as a very rare use of a 2002 Joe versus Cobra era toy. So that came out with its pilot Cobra Claws standing for Combat Light Armored Weapons Specialist. We don't really, in the Arah comics, ever see any substantial use of vehicles from that era. I think we might have seen the Hiss tank, the one with the kind of the head that lifts, being used, but much of that sort of 2000 early 2000s era of G.I. Joe, not really included in Arah so much.
Some of those vehicles from 2002, the aesthetic of them does not match the 1980s early to mid 90s aesthetic of Real American Hero. They are much more toyetic and sort of squashed and cartoony and sort of exaggerated. They don't feel like they are using anything realistically military as reference. They feel like they're more fantastical. I can sort of imagine this particular Fang 3 coming with like a Wolverine toy, from Toy Biz in, 1990 or 1995. Okay. The proportions of them, it is a fun looking vehicle. Doesn't really look like G.I. Joe or Cobra.
And then towards the back end of the issue, we see an Iron Grenadier, and the Iron Grenadier is in a long coat, which is reminiscent of the version 10 version of that figure, and indeed the which was from 2012, or indeed the G.I. Joe classified version of the character, which also has that kind of long coat look to it. And that was my I Spies.
Hama and Pelletier, and I'm certain this is in Hama's plot for the final page and the second to last page. You don't see Destro's face on the second to last page. He's far away. He's turned in that second panel. His head is cropped out. In the third panel, once again, you see some of his head, but he's looking away in the final panel. And this is also that, and I bet Hama's plot says for this final page of issue 310 for pencil artist Paul Pelletier, full page badass shot of Destro looking angry and focused. This is where you get to draw a really cool full page of Destro, and maybe Hama calls out that it's head and shoulders, or maybe he says Destro crumples the paper and Pelletier thinks, okay, this should be a close-up. This should not be a full body shot. But, there's no background. There's no realistic background. We don't see the fireplace or the walls. And that's okay. I don't need to see that. It's sort of any color swirl or sort of lines or whatever behind Destro. I understand the purpose of this final page. And it's to excite the reader and to give Paul Pelletier something big and sexy to draw. A full page that's sort of like a pinup or a cover that really punches you and gets you excited for the next issue.
Yeah, we don't get too many of those sort of pin-up pages in the pages of Arah, particularly as a final page. So, interesting to see here. On the letters page, did you pick up a little nugget from editor Alex Antone there?
I did. There are two, actually. You do the first one.
Well, the first one was, he says, we may or may not be cooking up some new Arah books as we speak. Stay tuned. We may or may not. I'm definitely leaning towards may. If he's saying this.
But the last time this happened,
yeah,
last time editor Alex Antone said, our regular artist is working on a top secret G.I. Joe project while another artist is going to do some fill-in issues. It turned out that the artist was really just doing the next issues of G.I. Joe. So, yes, I would love... I mean, letters pages are always, going back 40 years, I think there was a rule. This is a feeling. I don't have any evidence. But, you'd read a letters page in the 80s at Marvel, G.I. Joe or otherwise, and someone would write in and say, I haven't seen this character in a while or ever. Can you include this character? Or are you going to include this character? And the answer might very obviously be no. Either because it's an old toy that's not going to come back, or it's like Daredevil and you're writing into Uncanny X-Men and the editor doesn't want to go ask the Daredevil editor if they can, quote, borrow Daredevil, and the writer of X-Men, isn't going to use Daredevil. There's no reason to have that kind of crossover. And the answer is always, you never know. And that manages to let and it's often a kid, the kid who's written the letter, maintain their hope while also nodding to the less likelihood that it will happen. And it's also an open-ended way of saying it, because the more closed-ended way of saying it is, doesn't seem likely, but we'll check in with the writer. That's sort of disappointing, or sometimes it would be like, Daredevil's plenty busy in his own book, Chuck. But wait till you see Nightcrawler and Kitty Pryde returning to the pages of Uncanny X-Men down the line. It's like, be sure to check out the Nightcrawler miniseries that's starting up, then it becomes an ad for something else. Anyway, so I agree with you. I hope that we may be cooking up some new Arah books, but I think it might actually be, man, it's sure hard to put this book together. We're doing our best. If we have time, we'll do a spin-off, but probably not. Okay, so then you turn the page, and someone says, I'm really looking forward to the rumored reprint issues. Hunting down missing IDW back issues has been a nightmare. I just want to slightly fact-check that word rumored. I think the writer of this letter, who just goes by the name Joe, might be casually using the word rumor, because I don't know that there are rumors that IDW issues are going to get reprinted. I think it was confusingly referred to in the letters page just 1 or 2 months ago. And then, there's online chatter, but that may just be fans being hopeful. But anyway, in the answer, Alex Antone refers once again to the compendia and the Kickstarter, and then says, and we'll be working on bringing you more down the line. Mm-hmm. But again, that is vague enough that could sort of be like Like, oh, if you did the Kickstarter, you're going to get all of them in December. And then the first one's going to go to stores in like January. And then 2 and 3 and 4 will show up in stores in 25. That's down the line. And then I'd say, no. It seems like he was asking you about the IDW issues.
Yeah.
What about those? And I think absolutely the answer is yes, Skybound is going to reprint the IDW issues. I think the question is, when can they get around to it? Because A, they're really busy putting together the main book, and B, they put in a lot of extra time putting together the 4 compendia and running that Kickstarter, right? And running a Kickstarter is not easy, and doing all the files, to assemble those 4 books. They didn't do one of them and then wait a year and then do the second one and then wait 6 months and do the third one. They did all 4 of them.
Yep.
Which is kind of nuts. I think Skybound has to know that absolutely some fans want the IDW issues to be reprinted. And I think Skybound can make some money off of that. But here are the 2 major questions. When will they have time with their limited sort of staff to actually collate those files into like not the 6 issues at a time that IDW was doing, but the 50 issues at a time that a compendia would be, or whatever different format if they want to treat it differently than the full Marvel run. And B, how much money will it take in man hours versus how much money will it generate in sales? Because on the one hand, many people read the Marvel run, and it's very popular. And very few people read the IDW run, and it's not popular. And so maybe a lot of people are missing the IDW run and wants to buy it and read it. On the other hand, maybe a lot of people have heard it's only okay, or they sort of want it, but they would really pay for the Marvel run. Oh, I had some of the Marvel books as a kid, and like, oh, these 4 compendia, it's a Kickstarter, how easy, I can just get them all. And then you actually hand them the opportunity to get the IDW issues. And I feel like whatever the format, and my guess it would be a couple compendia, I don't think they will sell as well because it's not the same excitement, with like the Mike Zeck cover to issue 53 with Snake Eyes' face and an Uzi on the, the actual like compendium 1. It's like you don't have anything that iconic in the IDW run. You have some very nice covers, and just people are not as excited.
Yeah, I get all of that. I think this one won't have that nostalgia. They have hinted that there's more compendias that they want to get, and they want to eventually reprint everything. They've kind of used that word, and the obvious next one would be that they've done up to 155, and the obvious continuation of that would then be to start at 155 and a half and do the IDW Arah era of G.I. Joe. And that would be a more easy next marketable thing of, do you want to see the rest of this story and how it continues and takes us up to 301, which it has had decent sales numbers. So there's this, untapped market of people who have invested in the compendium and may have an appetite to see how the story continues, and maybe they're reading the new issues but didn't collect the IDW era. And I think that that could be marketed. Here's the rest of that story, and they'll have a big database of people that they can market to that as well. I think, as you say, it won't have that nostalgic factor of these are the comics that you read and loved as a child back in the 80s, and have that same sort of emotional, nostalgic kind of connection too. But I still think even if it doesn't go to the 3 million levels of success, that it could still definitely be a successful project if dealt correctly, and potentially an easier project as well, because in terms of the assets to create them, those were created a lot more recently by IDW, and hopefully will be in a lot more on the shelf ready to use format as they were printed digitally originally, that perhaps less would need to be done to get them into a state where they can be used.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see what kind of bells and whistles I'm assuming Skybound would try a Kickstarter for some hardcovers. Let's call it, Compendia 5, 6, and 7, which would include, as you said, 155.5 through 300 plus the 4 issues of Silent Option and the 2 yearbooks. And I think that's everything.
Pretty much, yeah. There's like the Prelude issue and that kind of thing. But yeah.
Yes. And the Cobra Civil War Prelude issue that falls between 219 and 220, which does not have a number on it. And also don't forget, 219 and 220 don't have numbers on them. So just it's a little hard when you find them in a back issue bin or you're putting them in a back issue bin. But it's sort of a fun mental game. What kind of reward tiers, would there be particular artists that Skybound would try and get to do, prints or trading cards or, signatures, that kind of thing. Yes, I think you make a very reasonable point. There is some money to be made on reprinting the IDW run, and lots of people didn't read it. And the challenge in marketing this will be not, oh, you had your chance to read this 10 years ago and you didn't. Must be a reason why. But instead, it's like, hey, there are another 150 issues of Larry Hama G.I. Joe. Don't you want to know what happens? And you have to, you sort of have to thread that needle.
Hey, Tim, speaking of the letter pages, is this an expression that you've heard used before? Spaghetti sauce trick?
This person is referring to the video feed where it looks like Scarlet and Snake Eyes are dead.
Oh, right.
And then in the next issue...
Clone Snake Eyes, the spaghetti sauce trick you did on us. Right. Got it.
Right. I'm relieved, actually, that after me forgetting several things from a previous issue and you having to remind me that at last you can forget something from a previous issue and I can remind you.
I was just thinking, is this a turn of phrase that people have a spaghetti sauce trick that you play on them? No, it's a specific plot point back from, whatever it was, 303 or whatever. Very good. And we've also reminded in the letter column of Compound Z, which was a sort of a plot point from the G.I. Joe toys around about 2014. Specifically, it was talked about in the G.I. Joe Collectors Club Zombie Initiative convention set, but I think also hinted at in other places across the line. So that set included the Toxo Zombie, where it talked that the addition of the highly contagious Compound Z replicating in their bodies and oozing from every wound and orifice makes them horrific walking weapons. So yeah, an interesting reminder, while we're seeing what they're now calling mutants, the kind of this zombie aspect has been hinted at, used at in Joe lore prior to this point.
Maybe it's Compound M. rather than Compound Z. There's a letter, the final letter asks twice for Mercer, Taurus, and Red Dog to be finally included in Larry Hama's continuity. And yeah, I'd like that. I like those characters. I don't see Hama tracking back to 1987 and introducing some characters that, for whatever reason, he didn't at the time. But yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah, cool. Could be a fun story.
I mean, maybe what I'm also saying is I appreciate any letter to this letters page that makes a very specific ask, which could have a very specific answer. Like sometimes someone says, I want to see some of the older characters, or I want to see some of the more obscure characters. And everyone's definition for those two things are a little different. So I think, it's all going to get sort of nicely ignored by the editor. Like the editor is not going to say like, Larry definitely has plans, or come on, Larry doesn't have plans. He's either going to sort of politely ignore it and just say, thanks for the letter. We're so excited. We'll be back in 2 months, or, go to the Kickstarter. Or isn't this issue great? But, if someone says, I love new Joes like Molto and Helix. Can Larry create some more? That's very specific. And if, to the extent that Larry Hama might see the letters page, that might plant a seed. If someone writes in and says, how about some of those characters we haven't seen? I don't think that penetrates. But if you say, how about Red Dog, Mercer, and Taurus? Larry Hama, if he sees the letters page, might say, who are those guys? And then he maybe he looks them up on 3djoes.com and he says, oh, well, that guy's kind of fun. Or maybe I sort of remember writing this file card. Or, oh, I didn't write that file card. I'm going to ignore that guy. Or, maybe I can do something with this guy.
Yeah. Cool. Shall we do a Yojo scoreage for these?
Yes.
Do you want to go first?
6, 7? I don't know. It's hard. I know a few episodes in a row I've been giving 2 numbers and sort of letting everyone decide if I'm going higher or lower. Great cover. Also, I just wanted to say one last thing about Nathan Fairbairn's color. Mr. Fairbairn, you can sign your name on the cover. Please do. I really like it when color artists sign the covers, because if they don't, I might think that the pencil and ink artist colored it themselves. And also, I didn't sort of biographically point out that Nathan Fairbairn colored Scott Pilgrim and Grant Morrison's Batman Incorporated. Okay, so back to the issue. Good storytelling, great art. Paul Pelletier is still more comfortable with people than with vehicles and tech, but the vehicles and tech are good. I do like this portrayal of Cobra Commander and seeing the battle armor. But to your point earlier in the episode, though a lot of things happen in this issue, it does feel like the battle and the battle lines are unfolding slower than I want, or with enough links to 5 and 10 issues ago that it feels slow. So good issue of G.I. Joe. Not my favorite.
Yep. I don't think I've got anything to add to yours, so I'll just say copy and paste. That's my that's my summary as well. You captured it perfectly there. Right. So and we've also in the back of this book got a nice little preview of G.I. Joe issue 1 coming November 13th, 2024. And on the advert for that, which is the last but one page, it says the biggest comic book of the decade is here. If not the year, the decade. Wow.
I think that is... I think that's the kind of hype you can do because it's an opinion. It's not a fact. It's sort of like saying the most exciting or the most anticipated. At the same time, it has more variant covers than any first printing Skybound, G.I. Joe, or Energon Universe comic book has so far. So that actually might be a factual statement as well. They might be saying we are going to sell more. Stores have not put in their final orders yet. In fact, stores have not, as of this recording, put in their initial orders yet, although it's coming up. But that actually might be talking about, copies sold and dollars generated.
Yeah, I mean, if they just sell one copy of each of the covers, they'll probably be at about 50. So those covers are going to help them. It's going to be a big launch, that's for sure. And the Arah will continue November 20th, 2024 with 311.
Is that why this gets a 6 and not a 7? Because the editor tells us there's going to be another skip month in the letters page. Can I blame it on the schedule?
Maybe, yeah. So we will have to wait an extra month for the next issue, but I bet it will be worth the wait because very much looking forward to seeing the return of Chris Mooneyham. And I'm sure with an extra month away, I will be gnawing on something just in anticipation of getting my Arah fix.
For my end, I will be sure in 2 months to have not reread 310 or 309. So I forget all sorts of obvious and important story points that 311 refers to. And I'll say, wait, why are they doing origami in the Thunder Machine? And you'll say, Tim, remember on the last page of 310, Destro folds the piece of paper that the Iron Grenadier brings to him.
Right, okay. It's foreshadowing. Right, so we will be covering that as it comes out. You can also look forward to some Devil's Due coverage from us over the next few weeks. We'll be looking at Scarlet issue 5 when that is out, as well as Destro 4 and 5, and having our big countdown to G.I. Joe issue 1 in November. You can find us in the normal places. talkingjoe.co.uk is the website that links to those places. So if you're not yet a member of our Facebook group, do join that. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and also follow us on YouTube. Our followers there gradually is ticking up, which is very heartening. Still not at 1,000. That's the ambition. So if you are not yet a subscriber on YouTube, do hit that subscribe button. We are also on Patreon, patreon.com/talkingjoe. So a big thanks to our backers: Richard, Sam, Bill, Christopher, Justin, Rob, Shane, Simon, Chris, Joe, Craig, Frank, and Mike, who are all getting early access to episodes, as well as some exclusive content. Tim, where can people find you when you are not talking to me about G.I. Joe comics?
AtomicAbeProductions.com. That's where my creative partners and I post video essays on television and film. Funny and well-researched. I have a comic book store in Somerville, Massachusetts, which borders Cambridge and Boston. That's Hub Comics, and I write about G.I. Joe at my blog, arealamericanbook.com.
Very good. So I think that is us done talking about A Real American Hero, issue 310, and also us done for this week. But until next time, remember that...
Nobody Beats Talking Joe, an international podcast!
Laters.
Do 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 beep 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 do 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 do. Moral superiority stuck in my craw. Do do do. Your parents going for that glove box. Do 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 do. Your ninjas are standing by this fire. Do do do. Let you pull me from this fire. Oh, let you pull me from this fire. Let me let you pull. Let me pull. Let you fire. Oh, come on over and let Jimmy something Dover. I forget. It'd be some hilarious. You'll do a great job rewriting this, Mark.